Thank you to my patrons. Your generosity and commitment to my work is astonishing. I sincerely appreciate it.
We're up doing some late night research.
Leave it silent for exactly 10 seconds.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Wow. Alright, done with the Morse. Thanks for the answer.
Allow me to demonstrate that this can be recreated by a non-believer with nothing other than a keen skeptical interest and a desire to convince you, dear listener, that this is hogwash. Hey everybody, Magic Skeptic here. And before we begin, I wanted to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this video, Atlas VPN. Did you know that Netflix hides thousands of TV shows and movie titles depending on which country or region you're in? Did you know that your internet service provider is spying on you and they have the ability to look at your internet search history and track your online activity? Did you know that there are digital criminals who dedicate their lives to retrieving your personal data using malicious links and other methods? Well, thankfully, there's a solution to all of these problems, and it's called Atlas VPN. For just $1.83 per month, yes, you heard that right. For just $1.83 per month, you can gain access to the international libraries of Netflix and other streaming websites. For just $1.83 per month, your internet search history and your private data can remain confidential and hidden from your internet service provider, as it should be. And for just $1.83 per month, you can be protected from malicious links and other terrible and awful scams that are perpetrated by the aforementioned digital criminals who dedicate their lives to retrieving your personal data. And the best part? Atlas VPN gives you access to all of this with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you decide that you don't like the product, which is extremely unlikely, it's no problem. Atlas VPN has got your back. And better still, by signing up for Atlas VPN, you also help out my channel. So what are you waiting for? The question isn't, can I afford Atlas VPN at $1.83 per month? The question is, can I afford not to have Atlas VPN? Think of it like a condom for surfing the internet. It's safe, it's cheap, it's effective, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. Atlas VPN, the best VPN deal on the net. Thank you very much for sponsoring this video. Hey everybody, Magic Skeptic here, and it's that time of year again. It's spooky season, folks. Halloween is upon us, and I cannot wait. Any of you who have been watching the channel for any decent length of time will know this already, but I absolutely love Halloween. I love it with a capital L. Despite my skepticism, despite the fact that I have no belief whatsoever in the supernatural or the paranormal or any of that junk, despite that, I absolutely love fiction. I love movies, and I love horror movies specifically. I mean, I love all types of movies, but horror happens to be one of my favorite genres. I love stories about ghosts, ghouls, goblins, killers, and all the rest of it. It's absolutely great. The problem, of course, is that some people, they go a step further. They also believe it. And given the fact that I'm Magic Skeptic, I think I have some kind of a responsibility here. At least I think I can do a good job of resisting the claims of those who would have us believe that this kind of stuff is real, that this kind of stuff is more than fiction. So to that end, my Halloween series is upon us once again, folks, and I want to do a little bit of debunking. And I want to start this Halloween season by looking at a video that went incredibly viral. This video is about 4 months old at the time of recording, and it's by a channel called Tyler Blanchard. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. In any case, this channel produced a video called I Scientifically Proved Ghosts Are Real. Quite the claim. And what I'm going to do in this video is go through some of the so-called paranormal phenomena that have been recorded in this video, and I'm going to explain or offer some insight as to how this stuff could be faked, how this stuff could have occurred naturally, and basically just offer some skeptical criticism and hopefully convince you, dear listener, if you needed convincing, which I doubt. I'm sure most of you are on my side to begin with, but in case there's anybody out there who does in fact take this stuff seriously, I hope to change your mind above all else. I hope to get you to see that this kind of stuff is easily fake, that this kind of stuff is hogwash. And so, with all that said, we're just going to dive right in here and start watching the video. We won't watch all of it. I've dissected the video down to a couple of the key points, a couple of the key instances where allegedly paranormal phenomena are occurring. So, with that said, let's dive right in and discover if indeed ghosts are real and whether or not they can be scientifically proven.
Are ghosts real or just scared people imagining things? It's a question that's been asked for centuries and still, there's no firm answers. But today, I have a way to actually find out if ghosts are real. Right behind me, I have the most haunted house in America, and well, this one right here is just a normal Airbnb. I'm gonna send a group of people to both of them. The catch is that both groups think their house is haunted, when in reality, only this one is. We're gonna find out if people make stuff up when they think something is haunted.
I had my producer Willie at the not haunted house, and he was the only one in on the experiment.
This house has never had a reported death in it. No guests have ever recorded any paranormal activity. It's just a normal house. But the guests that are coming here, they don't know that.
I want you guys to know that we're not trying to make a video like this.
I swear it's getting way more scary in here. I can feel it.
I'm getting the chills. I literally just felt like something was behind me.
Yeah, oh, good vibes in here.
To make sure we don't look like that, we'll be using the fake house to see how much of this is in your mind, and some super accurate tools I'll explain later, and find out if ghosts are undeniably real.
A point of order here, dear listener, and perhaps I'm being a little bit pedantic. You can be the judge. But it does seem a little bit contradictory to me to suggest and to posit that you're going to do this differently from how other YouTubers have done it. That your video, at least he seems to be implying, that his video is not going to be sensationalist. It's not going to be melodramatic, and they're going to do this right. They're going to take things seriously.
I want you guys to know that we're not trying to make a video like this.
I swear it's getting way more scary in here. I can feel it.
As the title would suggest, he seems to be wanting to give off this impression that he's going to explore this topic in a scientific fashion.
To make sure we don't look like that, we'll be using the fake house to see how much of this is in your mind, and some super accurate tools I'll explain later, and find out if ghosts are undeniably real.
And I must give credit where credit is due. I do think it's a smart idea to have a so-called control house. A house that is not alleged to be haunted, so that you can compare the experiences of people in that house with the experiences of those who are in the allegedly haunted house. But please notice the way I'm phrasing this, dear listener. I'm pointing out that one house is not haunted and that the other one is allegedly haunted. But notice that this is not the phraseology that's being used in the video. They've said it more than once at this point, that we're going to have a control house which isn't haunted, the fake house, and then we're going to have the experiences recorded in the haunted house as well.
Right behind me, I have the most haunted house in America. The catch is that both groups think their house is haunted, when in reality, only this one is.
But please notice, again, they're referring to the allegedly haunted house simply as the haunted house.
Right behind me, I have the most haunted house in America.
Now again, totally fair, totally get it. If you want to call this a pedantic interruption, I would totally understand why you might feel that way. But I do think this is relevant. I think the words that people choose are a pathway to their thinking. I think the words we choose can be revelatory in terms of the psychology that's at play. And when the video starts with the claim that there's a control house which isn't haunted, and that we're going to use that to compare with the actually haunted house, well, that kind of reveals that the well has already been poisoned. This wording reveals that these guys believe that one of these houses is already substantively different from the other from the word go. And that difference is that one of them is haunted, whereas the other one is not. So I do think it's important to point that out. I think these guys, while they're going into these different houses with all the goodwill in the world, and they're going in there in the spirit of mischief and fun and so on. I get that. I'm not trying to rain on their parade, and I'm not trying to say that they're bad people, but I do think it's important for anybody who values skepticism. I do think it's important to point out that these guys, some of them at least, are already believers, and that's definitely going to bias the results that we get here. That's definitely going to have an influence on what happens and where this goes. But with that acknowledged, let's move on.
The owner gave us some good places to go explore, and we had some fail-proof gear to do it with. I bought 2 sets of the same exact gear to use at the haunted and not haunted house. And the first piece of gear would be this ultrasound motion sensor.
Yeah, this looks like a scam right here.
But I can assure you it's not. All this is a motion sensor and is very accurate. If something goes in front of it, the music box starts. I posted a 10-hour video of this thing not going off randomly once, and a video of an engineer taking it apart to make sure it's not rigged. This only goes off when something's in front of it. Next, we have a normal twist flashlight. You can buy it on Amazon. Apparently ghosts can turn them on and off in response to questions, and I've never had it turn on accidentally. And finally, a thermal gun. You can also buy this on Amazon. In some cases, you can see human-shaped figures. All of this equipment is completely unbiased.
Well, is it though? Is all of this equipment completely unbiased? Well, I suppose that depends on what he means by the term unbiased. All I can tell you is that this equipment has been very specifically selected by ghost hunters. There's a reason, for example, that they're using the so-called Maglite instead of any other flashlight, and I'll get into all of that a little bit later on. I just want to allow some more of the video to play out before we get into any of the criticisms and before I offer any counter-explanations or naturalistic explanations, whether it be to do with the so-called unbiased equipment or something else. And so, with that acknowledged, let's move on.
Eric and I went down to the cellar to check for ghosts. Mac and Manuel went upstairs to go see if there was a little ghost boy running up and down the halls. I'm not gonna lie, I feel crazy even saying that.
Oh. Hey, how's it going? I heard you kind of run around up here in the hallway. Are you fast? You run up, yeah, you're fast. You think you're faster than me? Light off if you think you're faster than me.
Wow.
Okay.
All right. Turned off. This is weird. I've never done this.
Oh, we're gonna race? Turn off. Do you want to race? Alright. Deal's a deal, I guess. As soon as the light turns on again, I'm gonna run. If you won, turn the light off.
Oh. Wow.
So I won?
I don't know. It's really bright. Wow, man. Oh, you got me believing.
I don't know. It was pretty well timed.
There were definitely a couple answers that were like, huh.
So we're already in very deep waters, folks. You tell me, are you convinced? Do you now believe in the existence of ghosts? Do you believe that there's a spirit from another dimension, from beyond the grave, let's say? Do you believe that they're actually communicating with something paranormal, something supernatural? I mean, they asked questions and the torch lit up all by itself. Apparently this is an unbiased, to use his words, this is an unbiased torch.
This equipment is completely unbiased.
Well, so clearly we've established something supernatural here. The torch is lighting up all on its own. Bullshit! I'm sorry, folks, and I'm specifically sorry to anybody out there who watched this video that was produced by this channel and derived some comfort from it. And look, just before I go any further, can I just acknowledge that? I totally get why people have something invested in this belief. I totally get it. I totally understand. I've lost loved ones and people who I care dearly about. It would be lovely to think that I could communicate with them from beyond the grave. I get that when people watch these paranormal shows and when they watch these so-called supernatural encounters, that there can be a sense of comfort in coming to believe that it's all true, because it gives you hope that you're going to see your loved ones again. It gives you hope that you can communicate with them, and even if you can't communicate, it gives you some hope that they're there, that they still exist. But I'm sorry, guys, if there is evidence for that sort of thing, it's not to be found in this video. And the Maglite, this flashlight, this so-called unbiased flashlight, is part of the problem. And it's part of the reason why nobody should take this video seriously. What am I talking about? I did mention earlier in the video that there's a reason that they've purchased a Maglite and not some other flashlight. And the reason is that the Maglite can be set such that it randomly turns on and off. Is this an official setting of the Maglite? No, it's a bug. If you half turn the head of the Maglite so that it's halfway between the on and the off switch, and you leave it down, particularly after it's been in use for some time, the Maglite will then randomly switch on and off. Now you might say, dear listener, it didn't switch off and on randomly, Magic Skeptic. If you watch the video, it switched on in very specific moments and it switched off in very specific moments, and it seemed to be perfectly timed with their questions. First of all, no, that's actually categorically false. There are a number of moments in the video where they asked questions and nothing happened, but please notice that they offered an ad hoc justification for the fact that nothing happened. They said to the alleged ghost or spirit, if I won the race, stay on, and if I lost the race, switch off, or something like that. I might not have paraphrased it perfectly. It might have been the other way around.
If you won, turn the light off.
Oh. Wow.
So I won?
Please notice that that covers both options. If the light stays on, in other words, if nothing happens, well then that means the ghost is giving one answer. And then if it randomly switches off in that moment, well, I guess that means the ghost was giving the other answer. And so this is kind of like the fortune teller's gambit. The fortune teller will phrase things in such a way that both options are covered. Now, these guys in this video may or may not be doing that intentionally. I don't know. I certainly don't like to start a video with the allegation that my interlocutor is dishonest and engaged in deception. But as this video goes on, having watched it already, dear listener, I'm gonna have to say that deception does become a more probable explanation the further we go. But for now, let me extend an olive branch and say that maybe these questions were just randomly phrased in this way to cover both options. So I've done this experiment myself, and I'm going to show you that footage right now. You can see that if you just set your Maglite to this setting where it randomly switches on and off, you can get all sorts of alarming coincidences to occur, and it can be very creepy, it can be very weird, but so long as you understand that the Maglite has been set to this random torch setting, well then all of the mystery disappears. Allow me to demonstrate. If there's a spirit here, please make your presence known. Oh my god. Oh my god. Wow. Okay. Okay. Are you happy for me to be here? Let's make that more specific. If you're happy for me to be here, please interact with the flashlight. Oh my god. Okay, well at least they're happy for me to be here. Are you young? Are you old? Oh my god. Oh my god, the hairs are standing up on my arse. All you need to do is set the torch to the halfway point and you can achieve this spooky effect where it turns on and off on its own. Now, I've set it to the halfway point, so this may randomly turn off. There you go, just literally in the middle of me speaking. This will continue to randomly turn on and off while I speak. So, if you can watch that clip, that YouTube clip, and if you can watch my recreation of it, and still arrive at the conclusion that the reason the torch or that the flashlight is turning on and off is because they're actually communicating with something from beyond this world, if you think that they're genuinely communicating with a spirit or a ghost or someone from beyond this world, someone from heaven or something like that, if that's what you believe, despite my recreation of it and despite demonstrating that these very flashlights can turn on and off, well then I can't help you. I don't know what to tell you. You are beyond saving, I'm sorry to say. And what's really depressing about this is that there will be people who watch this video and not only will they continue to insist that that YouTube video contains real paranormal activity, but they will go on to say that my recreation of it is also paranormal, despite showing them right now that this torch is switching on and off all by itself because it switched to the halfway point. despite demonstrating that and despite duplicating the effect, they'll not only say that what happened in the YouTube video is real, they'll say that my recreation was also an example of paranormal activity and that I was communicating with ghosts without realizing it. But if that were the case, then why doesn't this work if the torch is switched totally on or off? So as you can see, as I've been speaking here, this torch has been randomly switching on and off. I don't know if it's going to do it again before I say what I'm going to say next, but the key point is if I take this torch, there you go, and I switch it to the entirely off position or the entirely on position, then it doesn't matter how many times I ask the ghosts or the spirits to interact with the torch, nothing happens. Nothing happens. And I can demonstrate that right now. So it's just switched off again. I'm now going to switch this to the completely off position. This is now a completely off Maglite. I've switched it entirely off. Now it won't matter. Spirits, are you there? Speak to me, speak to me, speak to me. It won't matter if I sit here for 20 days asking the torch to interact with me or asking the ghosts to turn it on. Nothing will happen. Similarly, if I switch it to the completely on position, it doesn't matter how many times I ask the ghosts, doesn't matter how many times I beg and I plead, nothing will happen. The torch will continue to stay on so long as the battery is there, so long as the battery doesn't run out. It will obviously and eventually turn off because the batteries will run out. But the key point is the only way to achieve this effect is to switch the torch to that halfway point, which I'm not going to do now again, not least because I've already demonstrated it a number of times. So there you have it, dear listener. The Maglite is a huge red flag in this allegedly paranormal activity. And one has to wonder, why did these YouTubers, why did this channel, when they were creating this video, why did they purchase a Maglite? Why didn't they purchase another flashlight? One with an actual button operation as opposed to the twisty head mechanism that's used in the Maglite. I can't help but wonder that there's something deceptive going on. But again, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. It's entirely possible, I dare say, that when they placed the Maglite down, they accidentally hadn't switched it all the way off. Maybe they thought they had switched it all the way off, but they accidentally left it in this slightly on position, which causes this effect where the torch randomly switches on and off. So I will extend that olive branch. I grant you easily that it's possible that these guys have accidentally deceived themselves. Let me extend that olive branch. But you can come to your own conclusions there, dear listener. Whether or not you think they're being deceptive in purchasing the Maglite, whether or not you think they're being deceptive in terms of achieving this effect with the Maglite whereby it's left in the half on, half off position, I'll leave you make up your own mind as to whether or not they're being deceptive. With all of that acknowledged, let's move on to the next allegedly paranormal event in this video.
Okay. Let's set that up here. Let's set that. Whoa.
Oh my.
If there's anyone... Okay, that's not us. If there's anyone here right now, could you walk in front of this motion box?
Thank you for making yourself known. We're here with positive energy. Is it okay if we sit here?
If it's okay if we sit here, can you please set off the motion box here? Let's make sure, let's check again. Yeah? Works great, bro.
Are you here in this room by choice?
But one thing's for sure is the gear is going off in here. And I'm really confident in that.
If there's another presence in this room, can you please walk in front of the sensor?
Yeah, there's no ghosts in there.
Pretty spooky, right? Have they proven the existence of ghosts? Are they communicating with somebody or something from beyond this world? I'm not convinced. Sorry. And there's a plethora of reasons why. Let's get started here. This device is known as a P.M.B, or a paranormal music box, and they are sold for a pretty penny. So while I was able to purchase a Maglite because this is cheap and inexpensive, I was not willing to purchase a P.M.B because they go for a hell of a lot. That said, I've done an immense amount of research here, and I think I've done a pretty good job of revealing what's actually going on here. But again, You can be the judge, dear listener. Before I go into debunking or trying to critique the use of this particular device, let's just get some information straight from the horse's mouth, as it were. What I've done here, guys, is pulled up a couple of websites which give information about the P.M.B, not least the very websites that sell the device. Let's read what they say about it, how it functions, and what sensors are contained within it. And I quote, "How does a paranormal music box work? The paranormal music box is triggered by motion. The motion is detected using a PIR motion sensor or an ultrasonic motion sensor. The basic models usually use a PIR sensor, while the high-end models use ultrasound." Okay, so now that we know what kind of motion sensors are contained within this P.M.B device, now we can begin to understand how it works. We can look into these motion sensors and figure out what makes them tick. Is it possible for them to misfire? And hopefully and ultimately we can explain why this motion sensor might be activating in this room, despite the fact that we can all clearly see in the video that nothing is walking in front of it. With all of that said, let's dive into this article that I found. This article claims to be, and I quote, the definitive motion sensor guide. And thankfully, this motion sensor guide contains some very helpful information about both PIR and ultrasonic motion sensors. And I quote, PIR motion sensor. A passive infrared motion sensor, also known as a PIR motion sensor, detects motion and people by measuring the differences in heat changes received on the infrared sensor. PIR motion sensors have a thin layer of pyroelectric material and 2 slots made of materials that are sensitive to infrared. When the detection area is empty without people, both 2 slots will detect the same amount of infrared emitted from the ambient environment. When a warm body like a human or a cat passes by the sensor, the first slot will receive and detect the heat change first, meaning a body comes. When the body leaves the area, the second slot will notice a reverse heat change, meaning the body has left the room. For example, if a PIR sensor controls a light, the PIR sensor will turn on the light when a person comes and turns off the light when the person leaves. Because all creatures, not only humans, emit infrared radiation, animals may get detected and trigger the PIR sensor. To further increase the accuracy of the PIR technology to let the sensor only react to movement from people, we can narrow the heat sensing range to near human temperature ranges. Human bodies have a skin temperature of about 34 degrees, radiating infrared at a wavelength of 9 to 10 micrometers. Restricting a PIR motion sensor within a sensitivity of 8 to 12 micrometers can improve the accuracy significantly. So now that we understand a little bit more about how PIR sensors function, and don't worry, we're going to get to the ultrasonic motion sensor momentarily, but now that we understand a little bit more about the PIR sensor, assuming that there isn't a ghost involved in the device that's being activated in this YouTube video, let's assume for a moment that there isn't a ghost that's setting it off. Now that we know a little bit more about the PIR sensor, is it possible that it's simply misfiring here? Well, again, dear listener, I've done my homework so that you don't have to. If we go back into this article, you'll see that there are in fact instances which can cause a PIR sensor to go off even though there isn't a person there. And I quote, all PIR, ultrasonic, and dual-tech motion sensors can be adjusted to low and high sensitivity according to your specific demand. If the motion sensor gets triggered too frequently, you can set the sensor's sensitivity to low. If the sensor does not react to nearby motions, you can set the sensitivity to high. This is a very important piece of information, dear listener. Please notice that it's possible to set these sensors such that they have a high or low sensitivity. So one can't help but wonder, has this device, this P.M.B device, been calibrated such that its sensitivity is high or low? Given the fact that it's activating, even though there's nobody walking in front of it, I'm going to go ahead and assume that its sensitivity has been set to high. Now, some of you might point out, quite rightly, and this would be a fair comment, Magic Skeptic, you don't know that. You can't say for sure that it's set to a high sensitivity. And that's a totally fair comment. But let me respond to that with some more evidence. It turns out that PIR sensors are notorious for misfiring. Now, while I couldn't find any specific reviews on the P.M.B. device because the manufacturers of said device only include 5-star reviews on their websites, and believe it or not, I checked and I searched for hours and couldn't find any negative reviews. Now, some people might say, well, maybe that's just because it's universally positively reviewed, Magic Skeptic. Well, if that's the case, then it's the first product in history, because I don't care how good a product is. When I go onto Amazon, there's always some dick who gives something, in many cases, an irrational and unfair bad review. But those people exist. So if this is the first product in history to have 0 bad reviews, well, then maybe they really do deserve a round of applause, because that is an achievement in and of itself. So, what am I saying here? I couldn't find any reviews, or certainly any negative reviews, for the P.M.B. device, so I decided to look up reviews for PIR sensors more generally, the kind of sensors that are used in home security and on doors and such. And if you look at those reviews, and bearing in mind, dear listener, those are the exact same PIR sensors that are being used in the P.M.B. It's just that the P.M.B. charges you a massively inflated price. Can't help but wonder if there's a profit incentive here. I don't know. You can be the judge on that, dear listener. But listen to some of these reviews. Listen to some of these reviews from people who purchased PIR sensors to use in their homes for various reasons, and you will begin to see why I'm extremely skeptical about the presence of ghosts as an explanation for the sensor being set off in this YouTube video. And I quote, "Can't figure out what's going on with this sensor. For years I've had LED lights on the side of the house. Never gave me a minute's bother until one night the sensor stopped working. Decided to get this because it was cheap enough, and I'm a bit of a tight you-know-what. Now the lights are constantly turning on and off, sometimes 30 times an hour, all through the night. I've turned down the sensitivity to the lowest setting and the duration, and still they switch on and won't turn off, or they just turn on for no reason. I have CCTV cameras which alert when the lights come on, and there's nothing ever there to activate them. The only conclusion, this product is not as good as the one that came with the lights originally, so I may return it and try and get my money back. Random performance. PIR was pointed to a concrete path. Recently tried pointing it at the adjacent hedge. It can work apparently perfectly for several days. Then it will switch lights on at dusk. Maybe switch off after an hour, switch on after 5 minutes, may stay off, may come back on, quite random, quite unacceptable. And last but not least, too sensitive, detects things that are not there. Bought early this year and fitted by a qualified electrician. Looks great in white, and I like that it is discreet. Sadly, that is the end of the good. The darn thing goes on and off at least 30 to 40 times a night. I can see it on my security cameras, and there is nothing there. And truthfully, dear listener, reviews like this about the PIR sensor technology just go on and on and on. There are countless numbers of these reviews online. All you need to do is look up PIR sensors on Amazon or in your local DIY. Whatever the case may be, if you look up reviews for PIR sensors, you will find that this is a very common complaint. So we do in fact have good evidence for PIR sensors misfiring. The fact that it goes off is not necessarily evidence of the paranormal. Are you going to sit there and tell me that all of these people who purchase these PIR sensors for their homes, are you going to sit there and tell me that they are all unwittingly detecting the paranormal, that they're all just accidentally discovering evidence of ghosts or spirits? Or could it be the case that this technology is simply unreliable? Now, you might say, dear listener, that I don't have enough evidence to conclude one way or the other, and in response to that, I'm going to quote one of my intellectual heroes, and that is Hume. Hume invites us in a very straightforward dichotomy to consider the following. What's more likely, that you are under a misapprehension or that something supernatural has actually occurred? Now, I'm paraphrasing him there. That's not the exact wording, but I think the principle that he's conveying is absolutely spot on. What's more likely, that these sensors are misfiring or that they're detecting the existence of something hitherto unobserved, something hitherto unproven, ghosts? I know what I'm putting my money on, dear listener. I think these sensors are simply a flawed technology. They can work, but perhaps it depends on the quality of the manufacturing. Maybe the PIR sensor that was bought by these people was of a low quality, and it's entirely possible that the PIR sensor that's in some P.M.Bs is faulty as well. And given the fact that we know from our reading thus far that they can be calibrated to be sensitive or not sensitive, and even as you heard in those reviews, when they turn the sensitivity way down, they can still misfire. Given that all of that is the case, I don't buy for a second that this paranormal music box is detecting the existence of ghosts. And before anybody says it, I'm sorry, but no, you cannot tell me that the P.M.B. was timed perfectly with the questions that they asked. Because a lot of people are going to say, but Magic Skeptic, if it was just randomly misfiring, then why does it time perfectly with their questions? It doesn't. There's multiple moments where they ask and nothing happens, so they repeat. And then yes, if you keep repeating, eventually, when the music box misfires, when the sensor falsely activates yet again, it's going to be timed with at least one of your ramblings. And then it just takes an unskeptical person to say, oh my God, that's spooky.
Thank you for making yourself known. We're here with positive energy. Is it okay if we sit here?
If it's okay if we sit here, can you please set off the motion box here?
But it's just hogwash. So I'm sorry, this just doesn't even rise to the level of interesting, let alone scientific, which is the whole point of this YouTuber's video. This is absolutely appalling, and if anybody takes this seriously, they're simply not a skeptic. So with PIR sensors dealt with and out of the way, let's do a deep dive now on ultrasonic sensors. And I'm going to go back to my trusty article, the article for all things sensors, and I quote, "Ultrasonic motion sensor detects motion by emitting high-frequency sound waves and measuring the differences from the signal that bounces back. When the detection area is empty, the ultrasonic sensor will detect the same frequency in the signal bounces back with the sound wave it sends out. When there is a moving object in the room, the sensor will detect a difference in frequency from the reflected sound signals. The ultrasonic motion sensor can also determine the distance from the target by measuring the time it needs for the sound wave signal to bounce back. Unlike PIR sensors, ultrasonic motion sensors do not need to have a clear sight of view of the detection area because sound waves can pass around obstacles and corners." So again, now that we have a better understanding of how ultrasonic motion sensors function, we can begin to unpack and understand why this P.M.B. sensor might be misfiring. Again, all in the assumption that it isn't a ghost. Yeah. Let's assume it isn't a ghost once again. So let's dive back into this article and figure out whether or not there's anything that can make ultrasonic motion sensors misfire. And I quote, "PIR sensors do not detect sound waves, so they are suitable for places with high airflow and noise sounds, where ultrasonic sensors are not competent and may get falsely triggered by the airflow. Ultrasonic motion sensors do not detect heat changes, so they are suitable to be installed near heat sources, where PIR motion sensors are not competent and may detect non-human temperature changes and trigger a false alarm." Even these more sophisticated, more expensive ultrasonic motion sensors can misfire because of something as simple as airflow. And if you don't believe that, if you don't believe the words of the article, and if you don't, by the way, that would simply be your skepticism kicking in, and I respect that. Thankfully, another YouTuber did an experiment using this paranormal music box in order to investigate what makes it tick, in order to investigate what may cause it to activate. And he demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that these devices can be activated by drafts and something as simple as opening a door, something as simple as some airflow. Now, this video is in Swedish and I've added subtitles at personal expense, I might add. It's taken me a bit of time to process this video, so I won't show you too much of it because I don't want you guys to be reading subtitles and so on. I don't want to bore you. I don't happen to think it's a boring video. I just know there's going to be a lot of viewers who are turned off by the subtitles and so on. But let me just show you a couple of excerpts from this video in order to demonstrate how easy it is for the paranormal music box to be set off by something as innocuous as air. Have a look.
Kan få igång den här lilla manicken. Ni är så välkomna in. Så slå gärna en liten trudelutt. Okej, ja, tack. Det räcker. Det är bra. Det är bra. Börja spela nu. Ja, absolut. Du kan spela lite mer där. Ja, jättebra. Oj, vad trovärdigt det blir. Absolut. Nej, men det är jättetrovärdigt. Okej.
So once again, dear listener, there you have it. These devices can misfire. These devices can go off for all sorts of reasons. Combine that random behavior with a group of young YouTubers who have already gone into this situation with presuppositions about whether or not there is or isn't a paranormal world.
Right behind me, I have the most haunted house in America.
Combine that with the fact that they've gone into this house with the presupposition that it might actually already be haunted.
The catch is that both groups think their house is haunted when in reality, only this one is.
And you've got yourself a recipe for incredulousness. You've got yourself a recipe for hogwash and nonsense and leaps in logic. That is what is happening here. The fact that the YouTuber who created this video considers this to be a scientific approach to proving the existence of ghosts is utterly laughable to me. But before we bring this video to a close, I want to anticipate some objections, and I've made note of these, because a lot of you are going to say, but Magic Skeptic, there are a number of things that you haven't addressed. You haven't addressed the fact that specific questions appear to be answered by the paranormal music box. Specific questions appear to be answered by the Maglite. You haven't addressed the fact that this YouTuber actually posted a 10-hour video of his paranormal music box, wherein that paranormal music box didn't misfire once. And you haven't addressed the fact that this YouTuber had a control house, another house where none of this stuff happened. So how do you explain all of that, Magic Skeptic? How do you explain all of that? How do you rule all of that out? How does that factor into your analysis? Doesn't all of that prove that what was happening in the haunted house was real? Well, again, dear listener, I'm afraid to say no. These things don't prove anything, and I'm going to take them in order, starting with coincidences. If you really think that the fact that the music box activated in synchronicity with a question, if you really think that that serves as powerful evidence for the paranormal, I just have to call that for what it is. Gullibility. You are gullible, my friend. Coincidences happen. You are forgetting that this YouTube video is a highly edited piece of entertainment. These guys have been walking around that house for however many hours, for a whole night. The video ends the following morning when they leave. So they have recorded hours and hours and hours of footage, and the total video length is 13 minutes and 49 seconds. You're seeing 13 minutes and 49 seconds out of potentially several hours of footage. How many times do you think they asked a question and the music box didn't activate? How many times did they ask a question and the Maglite didn't activate? Hell, there are some examples of that in the footage as it stands.
Thank you for making yourself known. We're here with positive energy. Is it okay if we sit here?
If it's okay if we sit here, can you please set off the motion box here?
We can see that happening in the footage that they did show us. So how much of the footage did not include such serendipitous moments whereby the question aligns perfectly with the lighting up of the flashlight or with the movement of the music box. If you don't take my word for it, I have duplicated the phenomenon. What I've tried to do is recreate one of the most serendipitous moments in the entire video, and if you jump into the comments of the YouTube video, you will see that anybody who was articulating any skepticism in the comments was shot down, and the key piece of evidence that was cited against those who were being skeptical was this one moment in the video where the guys count to 10, and on 10 there was a coincidence where the device lit up or where the music box went off.
We're up doing some late night research.
Leave it silent for exactly 10 seconds.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Wow.
Alright, done with the Morse. Thanks for the answer.
Holy shit.
Allow me to demonstrate that this can be recreated by a non-believer with nothing other than a keen skeptical interest and a desire to convince you, dear listener, that this is hogwash. Take a look. If there's a spirit present, please interact with this flashlight in 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh my God. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, a verified haunting. All I can do, dear listener, is demonstrate to you that these things can be duplicated, that they can be recreated. And if you don't take the fact that I can recreate these events using purely naturalistic means, if you don't take that seriously, if you don't take that as evidence against the claim that these events are truly paranormal, well then again, you're just beyond helping. You're beyond reason. But one final point I'll make about the coincidences that have occurred in this video before we move on. I've already mentioned that this is, potentially several hours of footage that was edited down to 13 minutes, but there's one other point I want to make on that, and that is that they're traveling throughout this house, right? We've already discussed the fact that the paranormal music box is very susceptible, assuming it has an ultrasonic sensor. I think the one he's using is ultrasonic because of the price he paid for it, but if it's a PIR or an ultrasonic, I've addressed both of those. But just remember, they've gone throughout this house looking for areas of activity, looking for the paranormal activity. So it's quite possible, now while I don't know this for sure, it's quite possible that they placed the paranormal box, the P.M.B, the paranormal music box, down in certain areas of the house and got no traction, no response, nothing. And so they went searching until they found an area where they did get a lot of activity from the paranormal music box. One can't help but wonder if the area they found was one with airflow. It might have been airflow that they were oblivious to. Might have been a draft. Lots of houses have drafts where there's a little bit of air, a slipstream of air that comes through a crack in the wall or comes beneath a door or comes from an attic above. There's all sorts of ways in which there could have been a slipstream of air that was activating the P.M.B that the guys in the room wouldn't have noticed. Again, assuming they're genuine, they might have been really freaked out by this because they couldn't see anybody walking in front of the box and yet it was going off. They could have just been unaware of the slipstream of air. If they were being truly scientific, they would have tested for this. They would have ensured that there was no airflow that was interrupting the signal or that was giving them a false alarm. They would have done this test in a vacuum. They would have done it some other way. This is what scientists actually do. This is what a skeptical person would have actually done. But no, they didn't do that. What they did was search the house until the box started lighting up like a Christmas tree. And when that starts happening, of course there's going to be moments where the box lights up in perfect synchronicity with a question that you asked. So the fact that there's coincidences, guys, is incredibly uncompelling to me. So let's move on to the second challenge that some viewers may have to my criticism here. Yes, it's true. this YouTuber did in fact post a 10-hour video of his paranormal music box not going off, not misfiring.
I posted a 10-hour video of this thing not going off randomly once.
He sets it up in a bedroom facing the wall, demonstrates that it's on by waving his hand in front of it. It activates when he waves his hand. He then walks away and he leaves the video filming for 10 hours. And during that entire 10-hour video, the paranormal music box doesn't misfire once. Therefore, Magic Skeptic, all of your criticisms are hogwash. It doesn't misfire, and so therefore when it does go off and activate in the haunted house, it must be because there are ghosts present. Bullshit! Please remember, dear listener, as I've already mentioned, they went throughout this allegedly haunted house looking for an area of allegedly paranormal activity. There were probably many areas in that house where the P.M.B. did not activate, and so they kept searching. Now, that doesn't make them dishonest. They might have viewed this as a kind of like an archaeological dig. We're just searching for artifacts. But what you're really doing, in terms of the physics, is you're trying to find an area which is going to cause the P.M.B. box to misfire. You're trying to find an area where there's going to be airflow that causes the P.M.B. box to misfire. Or if it's a PIR sensor, an area where heat might trigger it. There might be a slipstream of heat or a radiator that set it off. By the way, there is details on the website which suggests that some of these sensors don't work very well in low temperatures. And if you see at the end of the video when they walk outside, it's snowing, so clearly the temperatures were very low. So if there was no heating on in the house and the house was cold, that might have caused the sensors to misfire. Why do I bring all of this up? The fact that he has a 10-hour video from the comfort of his own home where the P.M.B. box doesn't misfire once, that doesn't surprise me at all. It would be trivially easy to find an area in any house, I would imagine, where the P.M.B. box doesn't misfire. It simply needs to be an area where there's no radical change in heat, if it's a PIR sensor, or it needs to be an area where there's no airflow, where there's no slipstreams of air, in the case of an ultrasonic sensor. And clearly he found that in his own 10-hour video from his own home. It appears to be a video that's recorded in a room in a modern home, which is presumably well insulated, and so there's nothing that could possibly interrupt the signal. And so yeah, it's not at all impressive to me that he has a video that shows that the sensor doesn't misfire. But one final thing I want to add here, which is rather suspicious. That video only contains one of the paranormal music boxes that are used in his YouTube video. Because remember, he's got 2 P.M.B. boxes, 2 Maglites, 2 of everything, 2 of every device that he's using. One that he uses in the allegedly haunted house and one that he uses in the control house.
I bought 2 sets of the same exact gear to use at the haunted and not haunted house. And the first piece of gear would be this ultrasound motion sensor.
So why does this 10-hour video only feature one of the paranormal music boxes? Wouldn't it have been trivially easy to just put both of them in the video? That does make me suspicious. Now, I'm not going to push this point too far, dear listener, because, again, I don't want to go down the road of insinuating that they're being deceptive or dishonest, but it is worthy of note that only one of the P.M.B. boxes is featured in the 10-hour video. Only one of them. Maybe that's the one that's used in the haunted house, or maybe it's the one that's used in the control house. I don't know. But if he's using 2 of them and both of them weren't tested, it's entirely possible that one of them is overly sensitive. And it's entirely possible that that's the one that's being used in the allegedly haunted house. Or you know what? It might be the one that never misfires, but then the environments were different. You see, this is another reason why his test is not scientific. He tests one when he should have tested both. But even the one he tests, there's an assumption. There's a flawed assumption in the methodology. He's assuming that the only thing that could cause the device to misfire is the device itself. He fails to take into consideration that environment is a factor, right? The environment matters. He didn't do the test in the same room. I'll tell you what would have been really spooky. After doing the 10-hour test where the device didn't misfire once, if at the end of that 10 hours, he did an additional hour, an 11th hour, where he then started to ask ghosts and spirits questions, if then the device started to go off and light up like a Christmas tree, I would say that would be genuinely spooky. That would be strange. Now, that wouldn't confirm ghosts. It would simply confirm that something strange is happening. A mystery is occurring, and we would need to engage in further investigation in order to determine what's causing the device to go off. That would be worthy of exploration. But of course, he doesn't do that. He takes the device that he tested for 10 hours, just one of them, and then he deploys it in either the control house or the haunted house. We'll never know which one unless one of you guys knows him, and you can ask him yourself. If I ever speak to this YouTuber, I'll ask him myself. But because the environment changes, you have destroyed the integrity of that test. You have destroyed the integrity of the test. A true test would have been to ask the questions in the very same environment with the very same device that you demonstrated wasn't misfiring. By adding an additional device and by changing the environment, you have removed the validity of your own test. You have destroyed the integrity of your own experiment. And that brings us, dear listener, to the final challenge that some of you might bring up, and that is the control house.
This one right here is just a normal Airbnb.
This house has never had a reported death in it. No guests have ever recorded any paranormal activity. It's just a normal house. But the guests that are coming here, they don't know that.
If there's another presence in this room, can you please walk in front of the sensor?
Yeah, there's no ghosts in there.
Some of you might say, but Magic Skeptic, in the control house, none of the devices lit up like Christmas trees. So doesn't that demonstrate that there's something supernatural happening in the haunted house? And again, I call bullshit. And I've got a couple of reasons why that's the case. First of all, there's 2 P.M.B. boxes in the experiment here, and only one of them was tested. For all we know, the sensitive box was placed in the haunted house, and the box that isn't sensitive was placed in the control house. That would explain why there wasn't a response in the control house. That's one possible explanation. The other possible explanation is, again, the environments are different. Maybe both P.M.B. boxes are identical, robust and well-functioning, but it just so happens that the haunted house has airflow and heat problems, and the control house doesn't have those problems, in which case we wouldn't expect any of the misfiring to occur there. That brings us to the Maglite, and this, dear listener, I'm afraid to say, in closing, is where I have to introduce the spectre of deception. But if you're being fair to me, I have resisted that spectre throughout the entire video. Multiple times throughout the video, I have extended an olive branch, and I'm even going to extend an olive branch with this final point I'm about to make. But credit where credit is due, dear listener. You have to give me some credit here. I have resisted the spectre of deception. I've resisted the idea that these guys are trying to deceive us all the way through the video. But right now, I have to set that aside and make my first accusation here of dishonesty. The manner in which the Maglite trick is achieved. Sure, it's possible to accidentally not switch it off fully and leave it between the half on, half off point. It's possible to have that occur accidentally. But the fact that that accidentally occurred in the haunted house and didn't occur at all in the control house leads me to believe that at least one person in the haunted house knew what they were doing. They knew what the Maglite trick is. Because let me tell you, dear listener, behind the scenes here, it took me quite a long time to set the Maglite in exactly the right position. You have to be incredibly precise. It's literally, you're not even noticeably moving the torch to get it into the correct position. If you go a half a millimeter too far one direction or the other, the trick won't work. It has to be very precisely calibrated. And clearly in the control house, they just set it to the off position and put the flashlight on the side. And so when they asked it questions, nothing happened. Right? Of course nothing was going to happen. Just like nothing happens with a Maglite if you leave it fully on or fully off in any environment. But the people in the haunted house just so happened to accidentally and precisely calibrate the Maglite so that it was in that perfect Goldilocks zone such that it would switch on and switch off. This is why I don't take seriously anything that happened in the so-called control house. The control house is a different environment. It had a Maglite that was actually switched off. It had a P.M.B box that didn't activate, but that shouldn't surprise anybody given what I've explained about how those devices function and how much environment matters. So the control house is utterly irrelevant. And in fact, it is the presence of the control house that leads me to assume that there may in fact be some deception going on. Because for there to be a control house where nothing happened, the Maglite had to be switched to either fully on or fully off for it to not activate on its own in the control house. Whereas in the haunted house, it had to be calibrated specifically and precisely in order to achieve the effect of it randomly switching on and off. The creator of the video appears to be under the impression that having a control house or having tested their P.M.B box for 10 hours is enough to satisfy the scientific method, or that that's enough in order to elevate this research to the level of science. All I hope, dear listener, is that I've done something in this video to demonstrate that that claim is garbage. Nothing about this experiment, nothing about what these guys have done, nothing about how they went about this research is scientific. It is garbage. There's nothing scientific about it. They are making leaps in logic. They are using technology that makes me incredibly suspicious. They're engaging in behaviors and saying things and doing things that are red flags, and which lead me to believe and to suppose that they might actually be engaging in a deceptive practice here, in a deceptive behavior. But as I always say, dear listener, you can be the judge. And with that said, I'm going to leave this video right there. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the video, drop a like in it. That helps out the channel so much, and it doesn't cost you a penny. If you do want to support the channel, however, you can do that by jumping into the description box below. When you get there, you'll find the link to my Patreon. Click that link and you'll be brought to a page where you can sign up for as little as £3 per month, and for that, and depending on which tier you choose, you will gain access to a plethora of perks, bonuses and extras. Don't forget, by the way, to jump into the comments below and offer some constructive criticism. Do you agree with my criticisms? Do you think I could have done a better job? Or perhaps you disagree and you believe that ghosts are real and you want to share that compelling evidence with me in the comments below. Whatever it might be, I would love to hear it. Other than that, thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. All the best. Bye-bye.